Ben stood behind Luke's chair, hands resting on the handles a little longer than needed. He didn't say it out loud, but inside he felt proud of himself, proud that he stayed, proud that he was the one helping, proud that Luke needed him. Luke shifted slightly in his seat. Ben, I'm not hungry right now, we just ate. Ben walked around so he could see Luke face to face. His tone softened, but there was still that firmness underneath. I know, Ben said calmly, but I also know you, and I know food is still tricky for you. Luke frowned a little. I said I'm not hungry though. Ben sighed, not frustrated, just steady. Then sit there until you are, no pressure, just sit with it. He reached down and gently clicked the chair into push mode, adjusting it so Luke couldn't roll himself away. Not harsh, just protective. Luke crossed his arms. You don't gotta control everything. Ben crouched down in front of him. I'm not trying to control you, I'm trying to keep you steady. Luke looked away. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. After a minute, Luke spoke softer. It's not that I don't want to eat, it's just when I think about eating more, I start to panic. Ben's expression shifted immediately. The pride melted into concern. Okay, he said gently, that's different, that's important. Luke blinked fast. It feels like if I eat when I'm not hungry, I lose control. Ben nodded slowly. So this isn't about the food, it's about control. Luke didn't answer, he didn't need to. Ben stood up and pulled a chair over so he was sitting at Luke's level, not above him, not towering. I'm not better than you because I help you, Ben admitted quietly, and you're not weak because you need help. Luke glanced at him. I don't want you to eat because I said so, Ben continued. I want you to eat because your body deserves to feel safe. Luke's shoulders dropped just a little. Can we do this instead? Ben asked. No pressure, no timer, we just sit. If you get hungry, you tell me. If you don't, that's okay too. Luke hesitated, then nodded. Ben reached out and gently squeezed Luke's hand. The push mode stayed on, not as control but as reassurance. A quiet reminder that Luke didn't have to run from the moment. He could stay, he could breathe. After a few minutes, Luke whispered, maybe just a little snack, not a full plate. Ben smiled, not victorious, just relieved. Okay, he said softly, a little snack. And this time it wasn't about proving anything, it was about building trust. Ben stood near the counter, already holding the box of formula. 4 bags through your feeding tube, no more arguing, that is final. Luke's jaw tightened, I hate that too. Ben didn't raise his voice, then eat something more or it's 2 extra bags of formula, your choice. The room went still. Luke stared at the floor, hands gripping the sides of his chair. The feeding tube wasn't new, the formula wasn't new, but the feeling of not having control over it, that still hit hard every time. Luke swallowed, give me the food. Ben paused. For a second he looked almost surprised, then he nodded once and set the formula box back down. Okay. He didn't make it dramatic, didn't make it a victory. He just moved calmly, preparing a plate, something simple, warm, easy. When he placed it in front of Luke, he crouched slightly so they were eye level again. I'm not trying to punish you, Ben said quietly. Your body needs fuel, you know that. Luke looked at the plate, it just feels like I never win. Ben's expression softened, this isn't about winning. Luke picked up the fork slowly, his hand trembled a little. It feels like if I don't choose fast enough, I lose. Ben reached out and gently steadied Luke's wrist, not forcing, just grounding. You chose, Ben said, that's the part that matters. Luke took a small bite. Ben stayed right there, not hovering, not praising, just present. After a few bites, Luke muttered, don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm fragile. Ben exhaled slowly, you're not fragile, you're healing. Luke didn't answer, but he kept eating. The formula stayed on the counter, untouched. And for once, the control didn't come from threats or ultimatums. It came from Luke choosing for himself. Ben leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded but relaxed. So, he asked gently, what do you want to do today? Luke blinked. No one ever asked me that before, he admitted quietly. Mostly I just followed what my parents told me. Ben's expression shifted. The pride he sometimes carried faded into something softer. Well, he said, stepping closer, this is your new life, so I'm asking you again, what do you want to do? Luke hesitated, like the answer felt too big to say out loud. I always wanted to go to the movies. Ben smiled, not teasing, not surprised, just warm. Movies it is. Luke's eyes lit up just a little. Ben clapped his hands lightly once. All right then, we'll make a day of it. He crouched beside Luke's chair. I'll connect you to your feed before we leave so you don't have to worry about getting hungry halfway through, and I'll get you changed so you're comfortable the whole time. Luke looked down, a faint blush creeping up his neck. The vulnerability of it still made him tense sometimes. You don't have to say it like that, Luke muttered. Ben's tone stayed calm. It's just part of taking care of you, nothing to be embarrassed about. He wheeled Luke toward the bedroom, movements steady and respectful. When he helped with the diaper change, he worked efficiently, no teasing, no unnecessary commentary, just care. Afterward, Ben hooked up the feeding pump, checking the line carefully. All set, he said, you'll be comfortable for the whole movie. Luke looked up at him, you really mean it, we're actually going. Ben grabbed his keys from the dresser, you picked it, that's what we're doing. Luke gave a small, almost shy smile. For the first time, the day wasn't about survival. It wasn't about control, it wasn't about arguing over food or formula. It was about choice. And as Ben pushed Luke toward the door, he leaned down slightly and said, next time you can pick the snacks too. Luke laughed softly. Okay, but no formula in a popcorn bucket. Ben smirked, deal. The car was quiet after the movie. Streetlights passed in soft streaks across the windshield. Luke stared out the window, fingers lightly gripping the edge of his blanket. Ben, sometimes I don't think I can handle my new life. Ben didn't interrupt. It still feels like I'm dreaming, Luke continued. Like I'm going to wake up and be back there again, back to being quiet when my parents took me out, smiling when they told me to, keeping the company image. His voice cracked slightly. I like my life now, I really do, but at the same time I still miss them. Even though they were using me. Ben pulled the car over into a quiet parking lot instead of answering right away. He turned in his seat so he was facing Luke fully. That makes sense, Ben said gently. Luke looked confused. It does. Yes, Ben replied, they're your parents, your brain doesn't just shut that off because things were wrong. Luke swallowed hard. You can miss people, Ben continued softly, and still know they hurt you. Both can exist at the same time. Luke's breathing grew heavier. I feel guilty for missing them. You don't have to, Ben said firmly but calm. Missing them doesn't mean you want to go back to being used, it just means you're human. Luke's eyes watered. It's weird, I feel safer now but I also feel lost. Ben reached over and gently rested a hand on Luke's shoulder. Of course you do, your whole life changed. You went from being controlled to being asked what you want, that's a big shift. Luke let out a shaky breath, sometimes having freedom feels scarier. Ben nodded because you weren't trained to use it, you were trained to perform. The word hit. Luke blinked. You're not dreaming, Ben said quietly, and you're not going back, what you have now is real, but it's okay if it takes time for your heart to catch up. Luke wiped his face with the back of his hand. I don't want to be quiet anymore. Then don't, Ben answered gently, not with me. Luke looked at him. You can miss them, Ben said again, you can grieve what you should have had, and you can still build something better. Luke nodded slowly. For the first time, the fear didn't feel like it was swallowing him whole. It just felt like something he could talk about. And that alone made this new life feel a little more real. Ben stepped into the hallway and pulled out his phone. He dialed John. John answered on the third ring. Yeah. John, can you pick Luke up from our place? He needs to talk to Vin. There was a pause on the other end. You know it was your doing that Vin is this way now, John said bluntly. Ben closed his eyes for a second. I know. Silence. That's why they need to talk, Ben added. His voice wasn't defensive, just tired, honest. John exhaled. I'll pick Luke up. Okay, bring him back by 8, we're eating ramen. Got it. The call ended. Ben stood there for a moment before walking back into the living room. Luke looked up from his chair. Who was that? John, Ben said, you're going to talk to Vin. Luke stiffened. You can't go in there. I'm not, Ben replied calmly. His brother John is coming to get you, you'll be back at 8. Luke's fingers curled slightly around the armrest. Why now? Because avoiding it hasn't helped, Ben said quietly, and you both deserve to say what hasn't been said. Luke looked down. What if he hates me? Ben stepped closer but didn't touch him this time. Then you'll hear it, Ben said honestly, and you'll survive it. That answer wasn't comforting, but it was real. Luke swallowed. And if he does? Then maybe you both get a little peace. Luke stared at the floor for a long moment, his feeding pump hummed softly beside him. You're not coming, Luke asked again, softer this time. No, Ben said, this isn't my conversation to control. That word hung in the air. Luke slowly nodded. A knock sounded at the door. Ben moved to answer it. John stood there, hands in his jacket pockets. You ready? John asked Luke, not unkindly. Luke hesitated, then nodded once. Ben walked behind the chair and unlocked it from push mode. He handed control over to John without another word. As John wheeled Luke toward the door, Luke glanced back. You'll be here at 8. Ben gave a small, steady nod. I'll be here. The door closed. For once, Ben didn't feel proud. He just felt hopeful that letting go, even a little, might be the right thing. John wheeled Luke into the living room quietly. Across the room, Vin sat in his own wheelchair near the window. His hands rested on his wheels, posture tense the second he saw Luke. Sam stood between them for a moment, reading the air. Vin broke the silence first. I don't like that kid, Mums. Sam glanced at him calmly. You two know what it's like to be controlled. Vin's jaw tightened. Ma, Ben is his caregiver. I know, Sam said gently, but you can understand what Luke is going through right now. Vin looked away, staring at his lap. I still don't trust Ben with Luke. Sam nodded slowly. I get it. The room went quiet. Luke swallowed. I didn't come here to defend him. Vin's eyes flicked up. I came here because I don't know how to feel about anything anymore, Luke admitted. And everyone keeps acting like I'm either rescued or brainwashed. Vin studied him carefully. You don't look brainwashed, Vin said bluntly. Luke almost let out a breath laugh. Thanks, I think. John leaned against the wall, staying out of it. Vin rolled a little closer, the soft sound of his wheels filling the space. Do you feel safe? Luke didn't answer right away. Yes, he said finally, but sometimes safe feels scary. Vin's expression shifted. That he understood. Because when you've been controlled, Vin said slowly, even freedom feels like a trick. Luke's eyes widened slightly. Sam watched quietly, not interrupting now. I miss my parents, Luke admitted, even though they used me. Vin nodded once. Yeah, that doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Luke's shoulders loosened just a bit. But, Vin added firmly, if Ben ever crosses a line, I'll be the first one there. Luke looked at him. You don't even like me. Vin shrugged lightly. Doesn't mean I want you hurt. That hit harder than comfort. Sam smiled faintly from the side of the room. Vin wheeled himself directly in front of Luke now so they were eye to eye, chair to chair. You get to choose now, Vin said. That's the difference. If you're choosing this life, that's yours, but if you ever feel like you're performing again, that's when you run. Luke nodded slowly. I'm not performing, he said quietly, not this time. Vin studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Okay. It wasn't full trust. But it wasn't rejection either. And for two boys who both knew what it felt like to have their lives controlled, that was enough for now. The room felt heavier now. Luke's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. At this point, he said quietly, I only have Ben. He's helping me out with my eating disorder, so you can say it. Maybe I'd be better off in a group home. Vin's head snapped up. Don't do that. Do what? Act like you're disposable. Luke froze. Vin rolled a little closer, his own wheelchair stopping inches away. Ben had the wrong paperwork for me, Vin said steadily. He thought I had a low IQ. I don't blame him for that. I blame my former therapist. He gave the wrong information. I got trauma because of that therapist. Ben went off what he was told. Luke listened, eyes wide. The only reason I gave Ben a restraining order, Vin continued, voice shaking slightly, was because of what happened to me before that, not because I thought he was evil. Sam stayed silent in the corner, letting it unfold. Vin swallowed hard. Ben called John to bring you here. That surprised me. Luke blinked. It did. Yeah, Vin said, if he was trying to isolate you, he wouldn't have called my brother to come get you. That thought hadn't crossed Luke's mind. You probably thought I was going to badmouth him, Vin added. Luke looked down. I kind of did. Vin gave a small sad half smile. He's helping you, Vin said, tears finally forming in his eyes, like he was trying to help me. The words landed heavy. I don't feel mad at you, Vin admitted. At least your story didn't end up on TV. Luke's head lifted quickly. I'm sorry that happened to you. Vin shrugged, but his voice cracked. It was humiliating. There was a long silence between them, not hostile, just honest. Luke spoke carefully. Sometimes I'm scared that if I mess up, I'll lose him. Vin wiped at his eyes roughly, then talk to him. Don't shrink, that's what we both used to do, shrink. Luke let that sink in. You're not better off in a group home just because you need help, Vin said firmly, and you're not weak for needing Ben. Luke's breathing steadied. But, Vin added, steadying himself too, always remember you have more than just him, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Luke looked at him. You have me, Vin said quietly. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. But it was real. Two boys in wheelchairs, both learning that help doesn't have to mean control, and that support doesn't have to mean ownership. For the first time since arriving, Luke didn't feel like he was choosing between people. He just felt understood. The room had quieted down after their conversation. Luke sat in his chair, trying to process everything that had been said. Sam broke the silence gently. Vin is right, David messed up your life, no offense, son. Vin nodded, looking straight ahead. Mom, it's the truth. Luke's hands fidgeted on the armrests. I don't understand why though, my parents love me. Vin glanced at him, voice calm but firm. They can love you and hurt you without realizing the difference. Luke frowned, shaking his head slightly. I don't understand why. Vin's eyes softened a little. One day you will. John, who had been quietly waiting by the door, wheeled forward. Luke, let me get you home so you can keep your eating schedule. Luke nodded slowly. Okay. Sam smiled warmly. You're welcome to return anytime. Luke gave a small smile in return as John began pushing him toward the door. After they left, the room was quiet again. Sam turned to Vin, raising an eyebrow. You really meant that? Vin exhaled slowly, his gaze falling to his lap. I still hate Ben, he admitted softly, but Luke doesn't need to hear that because in that house it's just Luke and Ben, not me. Sam nodded, understanding. You're protecting him. Vin shrugged lightly. Yeah, he deserves that much. The room stayed silent for a moment longer, the weight of truth and care lingering in the air, a reminder that sometimes support and understanding are as powerful as words of love. Ben watched John wheel Luke toward the door, then lowered his voice as he spoke. John, tell Vin thanks for me, he said quietly. John shook his head, half smile, half grimace. Vin didn't do anything for you, he did it for Luke. Ben frowned slightly but didn't argue. And by the way, John added, I didn't change Luke and I think he made a mess. Ben exhaled, running a hand over his face. John, come on man, he went through a lot. John shrugged, so has Vin. Without another word, John left, the door clicking softly behind him. Ben turned back to Luke, who had been quietly following along. Luke, go by your bed, I'll get you changed. Luke's shoulders tensed for a moment, then he slowly wheeled himself toward the bed. Ben knelt beside him, gently checking the feeding tube line before starting the diaper change. His movements were careful, steady, patient, but efficient. You're safe, Ben said softly, more to reassure himself as much as Luke. No rush, no pressure, just getting you comfortable. Luke didn't answer, just nodded slightly, letting Ben handle things. After a few moments, Ben finished and helped him settle back into bed. All done, he said quietly, feeling better. Luke adjusted himself under the blankets, letting out a small sigh. Yeah, thanks. Ben smiled faintly. Good, now get some rest, tomorrow's a new day. And for once, there was no argument, no struggle, just the quiet rhythm of care between them. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds as Luke shifted in his bed, still tangled in the blankets. He hesitated before speaking. Last night, Luke said softly, I worried that Vin was going to convince me I was better off in a group home than living with you. Ben, sitting nearby and checking the feeding pump, glanced at him. Luke continued, voice low. Even though he said he's not mad at you, I still felt that feeling. And John didn't even change me, Luke added. I get that everyone over there hates you. Ben's brow furrowed slightly. No, he said firmly. Luke shook his head. I was controlled by my parents, but I still feel the tension. Ben leaned a little closer, calm and steady. Did Vin help you out though? Luke hesitated, a little bit. Ben's expression softened. Then that's all that matters, they're angry at me, not at you, okay? Luke nodded slowly, okay. Ben gave a small, reassuring smile. Good, that's all I wanted you to know. Luke let out a quiet breath, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was carrying all of it alone. Ben's hand rested lightly on the bed frame. You're safe here, and that's what matters right now. Luke looked up at him and managed a small, tired smile. Thanks, Ben. Ben nodded, always. The room felt lighter after that, a quiet acknowledgement that while the past still lingered, Luke didn't have to face it alone. Ben walked into the room carrying a small basket of bath supplies. His expression was gentle, but his tone carried that quiet authority Luke had come to trust. I'll get your bath stuff, Ben said, setting the basket down on the bed. I'll bathe you here because your shower chair is broken and I don't feel comfortable putting you on it. Luke shifted slightly under the blankets. I never used it when it broke. Ben raised an eyebrow. What did you do then? The same thing you're doing, Luke said quietly, almost sheepishly. Ben paused, letting the words sink in. For how long? 13 years, Luke admitted. Ben's eyes softened. Once you get a new shower chair, you'll have a shower. Luke blinked. For real? Ben nodded firmly. For real, you're human, not an animal. You deserve to have a shower with help or without. No one should ever make you feel like you don't. Luke let out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. I can't believe I waited this long. You didn't have a choice back then, Ben said gently, but now you do, and we'll do it right. Luke shifted slightly, letting Ben begin. The warm washcloth in Ben's hands felt reassuring. It wasn't just about cleaning, it was about care, respect, and finally reclaiming something Luke had been missing for over a decade. Ben kept his voice soft. You've waited long enough, Luke, this is for you, every bit of it. Luke's eyes softened, a mix of relief and something he hadn't felt in a long time, being truly seen and cared for. This actually feels okay, he murmured. Ben smiled faintly. That's because it is okay, you deserve it. And for the first time in years, bathing wasn't a chore or a reminder of control, it was a quiet act of dignity and care. Ben had just finished helping Luke settle back into bed when a loud knock echoed through the house. Then a voice. Mom, Dad, Luke, anybody home? Luke froze. His eyes went wide. That's my brother. Ben's stomach dropped. Please don't tell me he didn't know you talked. Luke glanced at him. I won't say that then. Another knock, louder this time. Luke, I know you're in there. Ben straightened up, his voice stayed calm but his body tensed. Okay, breathe, you don't have to hide, you don't have to perform. Luke swallowed, the old reflex, be quiet, be small, don't make waves, pressed against his chest. I didn't tell him anything, Luke whispered. After I left, I just left. Ben nodded once. All right, I'm going to answer the door, you don't say anything you don't want to say, this is your house too. Luke watched as Ben walked down the hall. The door opened. Luke could hear the shift in tone immediately. Where are my parents? His brother demanded. They're not here, Ben replied evenly. Luke lives here now. There was a sharp silence. What do you mean he lives here? Since when does he talk for himself? Ben's voice stayed steady, since he decided to. Footsteps approached the bedroom. Luke's hands tightened in the blanket. His brother appeared in the doorway, stunned. You're talking. Luke's heart pounded. Ben didn't step in front of him, he didn't answer for him either. Luke took a shaky breath. Yeah, he said quietly, I am. The room felt like it tilted. His brother stared. Why didn't you ever? Because I wasn't allowed to, Luke said, voice stronger now. Silence again. Ben stayed just slightly to the side, present, but not controlling the moment. His brother looked between them. So what, he's your new boss now? No, Luke answered before Ben could. He's not my boss. The word felt powerful. Ben's chest tightened, not pride, not control, just relief. I live here, Luke continued, because I chose to. His brother didn't look convinced, but he also didn't know how to argue with that. I didn't know, his brother muttered. Yeah, Luke replied softly, that's kind of the point. The tension in the room lingered, but something had shifted. For the first time, Luke wasn't being spoken for. He was speaking. The air in the room felt like it had been sucked out. Luke's brother stood frozen near the doorway. Where is Mom and Dad? He demanded. I texted them, no answer. Luke looked straight at him. Josh, they're in jail for exploitation of me and embezzlement. Josh blinked. Embezzlement from the company. Gone, Luke said quietly, the company's gone. Josh's face shifted from confusion to realization. No wonder my allowance wasn't in my bank account. Luke's jaw tightened. John, he caught himself. Josh, how much money did they give you? Josh frowned. Who are you right now? Luke's voice sharpened. Ben, not a word. Ben stayed silent. Luke looked back at his brother. Josh, Frank Seaman, how much money did they give you? Josh swallowed. 3 million. The number landed heavy. Luke didn't blink. Half of that money is mine. Josh stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You have a bank account. Mom always said I put money in both accounts. Luke's hands trembled slightly on the blanket. Both accounts, Luke said slowly, anger rising, means you and Dad, God damn it. The room went quiet. Josh shook his head. No, that's not what she said. It's exactly what she said, Luke snapped. You just didn't hear what she wasn't saying. Ben stepped slightly closer but still didn't interrupt. Josh ran a hand through his hair. So what, they stole from you? Luke let out a hollow laugh. They built everything off me. Silence again. Josh looked smaller now, not arrogant, not defensive, just stunned. I didn't know, he said quietly. I know, Luke replied. That was the part that hurt the most. Josh looked around the room at the feeding pump, the wheelchair, the quiet order of the house. They told me you couldn't manage money, he said slowly. Luke met his eyes. They told everyone that. Josh swallowed hard. So what happens now, he asked. Luke exhaled. Now, he said, voice steady despite the shake in his chest, I stopped being the quiet investment. Ben finally spoke, calm and measured. And now, he added, lawyers untangle the rest. Josh looked between them, the reality finally sinking in. For the first time, Luke wasn't the silent figure in the background of the family business. He was the one holding the truth. Josh looked at his phone, pale. Linda's coming over, a few minutes. Luke's stomach dropped. Ben, hide me. Ben looked at him steadily. I'm not doing what you used to do. Luke's head snapped up. Not funny, he stopped himself, jaw tight. She's not safe. Before Ben could answer, the front door opened. Uncle Mike told me everything, Linda's voice carried down the hall, and that's what I hear for the first time from my baby brother. Her footsteps were fast, angry. Luke's heart started pounding the way it used to before corporate events. Smile, stay quiet, don't mess this up. Ben leaned closer. You don't have to hide, but you also don't have to perform. Linda appeared in the hallway, eyes already glossy with emotion. Luke, she said, softer now but still intense, is it true, jail, exploitation, why didn't you tell me? Luke's throat tightened. Everybody but Ben get out of my room, Luke said suddenly. I need to get dressed. Josh blinked. Luke. Out. There was something different in his tone now, not small, not apologetic. Linda hesitated. Ben stepped toward the doorway, calm but firm. He asked for space. Josh gently guided Linda back into the hallway. The door closed. The room was quiet again. Luke's hands were shaking. I can't do this in pajamas, he muttered. You don't have to do anything perfectly, Ben replied, moving to help him sit up. What do you want to wear? Luke took a breath, trying to steady himself. Something normal, he said, not what they used to pick. Ben nodded and helped him change, quick, respectful, focused. You don't have to hide, Ben repeated softly, but if you want boundaries, we set boundaries. Luke looked up at him. I'm not that quiet kid anymore, Luke said. No, Ben agreed, you're not. There was another knock at the bedroom door. Luke, Linda's voice was softer now, I'm not here to attack you. Luke straightened his shoulders. Okay, he said quietly, let's see if that's true. Ben stepped slightly behind him, not in front, not shielding, just there. And this time, when the door opened, Luke wasn't being dragged into the conversation. He was walking into it. Luke looked at both of them, his jaw tight but his voice steady. After you two left, Mom's business exploded. She was talking about me before you left. And you remember how I was always going to doctor appointments in a different state? Linda's face shifted. Yeah, and Mom got you a caregiver that week when we were gone. Luke shook his head slowly. Those weren't doctor appointments, they were business trips. Silence. Josh blinked. What? They used me, Luke said plainly. Meetings, investors, sympathy, image, I was part of the pitch. Linda covered her mouth. Josh's voice dropped. Why didn't you tell us? Luke let out a shaky breath. Because Mom and Dad told me if I spoke to anyone, you would suffer too. Linda's eyes filled. What does that even mean? They said you wouldn't get to go to law school, Luke said, looking at her. And Josh, you wouldn't get to study abroad. They said everything would fall apart, and it would be my fault. Josh stepped forward. That wasn't your responsibility. They told me you'd resent me, Luke choked. I was a kid. The words cracked something open. Ben stepped closer, voice calm but firm. Luke, you were a child. You should never have carried that responsibility. Luke's composure shattered. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. Linda crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt in front of him. Don't you dare apologize, she whispered through tears. Josh shook his head hard. You protected us, you thought you were protecting us. I was scared, Luke cried. I didn't know what was real. Ben rested a steady hand on Luke's shoulder but let his siblings respond. Linda gently took Luke's hands. You were manipulated, she said. That's not weakness, that's abuse. Josh's voice broke. We were supposed to protect you. Luke cried harder at that. For years he'd believed he'd failed them. Now the truth sat in the open, ugly, heavy, undeniable, but no longer his alone. Ben spoke softly. You don't owe anyone an apology for surviving. Luke wiped at his face, still shaking. Josh leaned down so they were eye level. We don't resent you, he said firmly. We never would have. Linda nodded. You were never the burden. You were the reason they succeeded. The room was filled with grief, but also something new. Clarity. And for the first time, Luke wasn't carrying the secret by himself. Luke wiped his face, but his voice was still shaky. I didn't realize it, not fully, until Ben came back. The room shifted slightly at that. Ben stood quietly behind him, not defensive, not proud, just present. Even your Uncle Mark didn't know, Ben added. He thought something was off, but he didn't know what. Linda nodded slowly. He kept trying to get a device so Luke could talk, some communication system. Dad kept saying Luke was in PT and needed to focus on physical therapy. Josh frowned. I remember that. Dad shut it down every time. Ben's jaw tightened. That happened when I was here too. That's when I called APS and my PO. Josh blinked. Your probation officer. Ben nodded once. Luke was about to call my PO because he thought he was getting me in trouble. Luke's eyes filled again. Ben, I was scared, I'm sorry. Ben moved around so he was in front of him now. Luke, he said gently, as long as you were going to be safe, I didn't care. The words were steady, no resentment in them. I knew you were reacting out of fear, Ben continued, not betrayal. Luke swallowed. I thought if I made you leave, everything would calm down. I know, Ben said. Linda looked between them. You called Adult Protective Services. Yes, Ben answered plainly, because something wasn't right and no one else was allowed to see it. Josh exhaled slowly. So this didn't just start recently. No, Luke said quietly, it was normal to me. That word hit hard. Ben's voice softened again. When you grow up in something you don't know it's wrong, it just feels normal. Luke nodded faintly. Linda stepped closer. Uncle Mark suspected something, but Dad controlled access, he controlled information. Josh shook his head. He controlled all of us. The realization settled over them. Luke looked at Ben. You stayed. Ben gave a small shrug. Yeah. Even when I tried to push you out. Yeah. Luke's breathing steadied. I thought I was ruining your life, Luke whispered. Ben shook his head. You weren't ruining my life, I was trying to protect yours. Silence fell again, not tense this time, but heavy with understanding. For years, Luke thought he'd been the cause of everything. Now he was starting to see the truth. He had been the center of it, but not the villain. And for the first time, everyone in the room knew it. Linda moved closer, her voice firm but emotional. Me and Josh would not have been angry if you told us the truth, and if it jeopardized us, then it jeopardized us. We would have protected you from Mom and Dad. Josh nodded immediately. Yeah, I might be hard on us sometimes, but you wouldn't have had to do anything like that alone. Luke stared down at his hands. I feel dumb. The word hung there small, heavy. Ben's expression tightened slightly, but he didn't jump in first. Linda gently reached for Luke's hand. You were a kid, she said softly. You were threatened. Josh added, you were manipulated by adults who controlled everything around you. Luke shook his head, but I believed them. Of course you did, Ben said calmly. They were your parents. When authority figures tell a child something over and over, especially with fear attached, the child believes it. That's not stupidity, that's survival. Luke's breathing slowed just a little. Josh crouched down so they were eye level. You were trying to protect us, he said. That's not dumb, that's loyal. Linda's voice cracked, and honestly, it makes me mad at them, not at you. Luke looked up slowly. You don't think I should have known better? Ben answered that one directly. No, because knowing better requires being taught better, and you were. Silence settled, but it wasn't sharp anymore. Luke swallowed. I thought if I carried it alone, it would hurt less people. Josh shook his head. It just hurt you. That truth landed quietly. Linda squeezed Luke's hand. You don't carry it alone anymore. Ben rested a steady hand on Luke's shoulder. And feeling dumb right now, that's your brain reprocessing years of manipulation. It's uncomfortable, but it means you're seeing clearly. Luke blinked back, tears again, but they weren't panic this time. They were release. I really thought you'd hate me, he admitted. Josh leaned forward and hugged him carefully around the shoulders. Not a chance. For the first time in a long time, Luke wasn't bracing for resentment. He was being met with protection instead of pressure. And that changed everything. The room had finally settled into something steady when Ben glanced at the clock. Luke, he said gently but firmly, I know you're talking to your brother and sister, but it's time to eat a little something. Luke exhaled, I can wait for dinner. Ben didn't raise his voice. If you wait, I'm taking out another formula bag, I'm not joking. Luke shot him a look, half annoyed, half knowing he meant it. Fine, an apple then. He looked at Josh and Linda, his voice quieter now. Because of all this, I have an eating disorder. Linda blinked. What kind of? Anorexia, Ben said calmly, not dramatic, just factual. Josh's face changed immediately. This is from everything. Luke nodded, yes. Silence filled the room again, but this one felt different. He wasn't hiding it, he wasn't pretending. Ben sliced the apple and placed the plate on the table in front of Luke. Eat at least 5 slices, Ben said. Dinner's almost ready. Luke stared at the plate. Josh looked between them. Is that how it works now? Ben answered evenly. Structure, not punishment. His body needs consistency. Linda sat down closer. Are you in treatment? Luke nodded slightly. Yeah, we're working on it. Ben stayed nearby but didn't hover. Luke picked up 1 slice. His hand hesitated. Josh spoke gently, you don't have to prove anything to us. Linda added, we just want you healthy. Luke took a small bite. Then another. Ben didn't praise, didn't clap, just stayed steady. By the 3rd slice, Luke's breathing had evened out. By the 5th, he set the core down and wiped his hands. 5, he said quietly. Ben nodded once, good. Not celebratory, just grounded. Josh exhaled slowly, they really did a number on you. Luke looked up at him, yeah. Linda reached over and squeezed his shoulder. We can't undo it, but we can be here now. Ben stepped toward the kitchen, dinner in 10. Luke looked at the empty plate. For once, eating didn't feel like control from his parents. It felt like reclaiming something they had damaged. And this time, he wasn't doing it alone. Luke stared down at his hands again. They ruined me, he said quietly. That night still makes me feel better and embarrassed at the same time. Linda's expression softened, better because it's out, embarrassed because it was hidden. Luke nodded. Linda swallowed, and I need to say something too. I was coming here a month ago because I wanted money. The honesty landed heavy. Luke looked up at her. How much money do you even have from all this? She asked carefully. Luke took a slow breath. If I sell the house, about 2 million, but right now, 0. I don't want the money, it's tainted. Josh frowned. Tainted. It was built off me, Luke said. Off lies, off manipulation. I don't want to buy anything fun with it. I don't want to feel like I'm benefiting from what they did. Linda leaned forward. You built everything, it's yours. Luke shook his head. Maybe legally, but it feels dirty. Ben stepped in gently, not overriding, just grounding. Money itself isn't moral or immoral, he said calmly. It's what was done to get it that was wrong. Luke looked conflicted. I don't want to live fancy off that money, Luke continued. If I use it, it's for necessities like a shower chair, medical stuff, things I actually need, but I don't want anything else from it. Josh nodded slowly. That's not greed, that's boundaries. Linda added, using it to take care of yourself isn't the same as celebrating what they did. Luke's voice dropped. It feels like if I enjoy it, I'm approving of it. Ben shook his head gently. No, taking control of it would be you reclaiming it. That word again, reclaiming. Luke thought for a long moment. I just don't want it to define me, he said. It doesn't, Linda replied. You were the product they sold, not the profit. Josh added, if anything, using it to build your life the right way is the opposite of dirty. Luke exhaled slowly. Start with the shower chair, Ben said quietly. Start with dignity. Luke nodded faintly. Okay, he said, just what I need, nothing flashy. Linda smiled softly. That's not dirty, that's healing. For the first time, the money didn't feel like a curse hanging over him. It felt like something he could choose how to handle, instead of something that controlled him. Linda suddenly stood up, covering her mouth as tears spilled over. I need a minute, she whispered and quickly walked out of Luke's room. The door stayed half open. Luke froze. Did I do something wrong? His voice was small again, that old reflex creeping back in. Josh immediately shook his head. No, you didn't. Luke's fingers tightened on the blanket. She looked upset. She is upset, Josh said gently, but not at you. Luke looked unconvinced. It's overwhelming, Josh continued. For both of us, we're realizing how much we didn't see, that we weren't there, that you were carrying this alone. Ben stayed quiet, watching Luke's reaction. Luke swallowed. I didn't mean to make her cry. You didn't make her cry, Josh corrected softly. The truth did. That landed. Josh stepped closer. When you love someone and find out they were hurting for years, it hits hard. Luke nodded slowly. I'm going to go talk to her, Josh said. Just give her a minute. Luke looked toward the doorway. She's not mad. Josh gave him a firm look. Not even close. After Josh left, the room grew quiet again. Luke exhaled shakily. Every time someone reacts big, I think I messed up. Ben moved a little closer. That's because in your old house, big reactions meant danger, Ben said calmly. Here, big reactions mean people care. Luke blinked. That's different, he admitted. Very, Ben replied. Luke leaned back against his pillow, still processing. For once, tears in the hallway didn't mean punishment was coming. They meant someone finally understood. The living room was quiet except for the tension lingering in the air. Linda's voice broke it first, soft but firm. Our own parents ruined Luke's life, and you're not mad, Josh. Josh exhaled, his shoulders tense. I am mad, but I hold it in so Luke doesn't see. Linda's eyes softened. He hid it so we could have our dreams. Josh nodded slowly. I'm numb right now. He needed to be nonverbal so we could have some sort of better life. I still don't understand why. Ben stepped out from the hallway, calm and steady. You two are good. Josh turned toward him. Ben, thank you for saving our brother. Ben shook his head, voice low but firm. He needed help, that's all. The tension barely eased before the front door opened, and Linda's husband, Pete, walked in, frowning. What's wrong? He asked, noticing the expressions on everyone's faces. Josh straightened. Luke was exploited by our parents and now he can speak. Pete froze. No, you're lying. Josh shook his head, frustration creeping into his tone. I wish I was lying. Ben moved a little forward. Come, he can explain. Pete's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Josh pointed calmly. He's Ben, he basically saved Luke and he's his caregiver. Pete's face twisted in disbelief, but Ben stayed steady, unflinching. Luke's safe, Ben said quietly, and he's ready to tell the truth about everything. Josh looked at Pete. It's time you hear it from him, not from us, from Luke. The room went still, all eyes on the door where Luke sat, small but poised, ready to speak for himself for the first time in years. Linda stepped closer to Luke, her voice gentle. Luke, this is Pete, we told him everything. Luke shook his head slightly, looking down. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Pete froze, surprise written across his face. Oh my gosh. Luke's expression softened, a small vulnerability showing. Pete, I miss you. Pete knelt down beside him, voice warm. I missed you too, bud, and you don't have to talk about it anymore if you don't want to. Luke's lips curved into a faint, relieved smile. Thank you. Pete nodded, resting a hand lightly on his shoulder. Anytime, Luke, anytime. For the first time that day, the weight in Luke's chest lifted just a little, not because the past had changed, but because he had a choice now, and he could simply feel safe. Ben clapped his hands lightly. Time to eat dinner, everyone. Luke groaned softly from his chair, just a little bit. Ben's tone didn't waver. Extra 2 formula bags tonight. Luke blinked at him, too sleepy to argue. Okay. Josh leaned closer. Luke, just eat some food with us, don't make it a battle. Pete frowned, looking between them. What happened? Linda spoke up gently. Just a food issue. That was the only thing Luke had control over. Ben's helping him with it. Pete's eyebrows shot up. I thought only girls could get an eating disorder. Luke shook his head slightly. It's more common in girls, but guys can get it as well. Ben set a plate in front of Luke, voice calm but firm. Eat a little now, dinner's almost ready and it's about keeping you safe, not about punishment. Luke picked up a fork slowly, glancing at his family. Okay, I'll try. Josh smiled faintly. That's all anyone asks. Pete nodded, still processing, while Linda gently patted Luke's shoulder. For the first time, mealtime wasn't just a struggle for control, it was a quiet step toward healing, with support surrounding him on all sides. Luke leaned back in his chair, his fork resting on the plate. Thank you guys for not attacking me. Josh gave him a small, understanding nod. You had a hard time with Mom and Dad, so I get it. Linda smiled softly. Pete and I might be moving over here soon, that way we can be closer to you and Ben. Ben leaned slightly toward Luke, calm and steady. See, they're not upset with you. Luke exhaled shakily. I just need to throw up. Ben's hand rested lightly on his arm. Breathe, just breathe, stop eating for a little bit, it's okay. Luke closed his eyes and took slow, measured breaths, letting the tension slowly ease. For once, the room wasn't a battlefield. It was a space for care, patience, and understanding.